They say you never forget the smell of gunpowder. It clings to your soul like guilt. That night, it mixed with something worse. The scent of baby powder from the open diaper bag. I was still holding my son when the paramedics pulled me back. His tiny body fit in one hand. My wife was screaming, her voice raw, breaking into sounds I didn't even recognize as human. The shooter stood 10 feet away, trembling behind her porch rail, a gun still smoking in her hand. Our HOA president, Karen McBride. She didn't even look at me when she said it. It was an accident. But I could see it in her eyes. It wasn't. That was the night everything in me, every law I'd ever upheld, broke. And if you think you know what you'd do in that moment, you don't. Because I didn't either. Not yet. Before that night, my life was ordinary, peaceful even. We had just moved into Oak Ridge Estates, a quiet suburban neighborhood tucked between two rolling hills and a man-made lake that mirrored the sky like glass. The kind of place where people left their garage doors open while mowing the lawn, where neighbors waved even if they didn't know your name. I wanted that for my family. After 20 years in federal service, DEA, task force work, the kind of things that leave shadows on your conscience, I was done. I'd seen too much blood, too much betrayal. I wanted to trade sirens for sprinklers, gunfire for laughter. My wife, Elena, was 7 months pregnant when we unpacked the last box. She waddled around barefoot, humming to the baby, and planning out where the nursery would go. Our neighbor across the street, Karen McBride, was the first to welcome us. She showed up with a clipboard, not cookies, and a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hi there. I'm Karen, the HOA president. We just want to make sure you've read our community guidelines." I remember laughing, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Her eyes swept over our driveway like a security camera. At the old pickup I'd restored with my dad, at the flagpole I was halfway through installing. "That flagpole might need board approval," she said. "Board approval? It's the American flag. We just try to keep things uniform." That word, uniform, stuck with me. In her mouth, it sounded less like order and more like control. Over the next few weeks, I saw her everywhere, taking photos of lawns, leaving notes on mailboxes, timing how long trash bins sat by the curb. The neighbors called her HOA Karen behind her back, some to mock her, others because they were afraid of her. But me, I ignored it. I dealt with far worse than a power-hungry suburban tyrant, or so I thought. When our son, Noah, was born 2 months later, everything else faded. He came into the world small but fierce, a pair of lungs that could rattle the windows. I remember the smell of hospital sanitizer mixed with the vanilla lotion Elena used. Her hair stuck to her forehead, tears streaming down her cheeks as she whispered, "We did it, Michael." He's here. I'd faced down cartel bosses, seen men die in firefights, but nothing prepared me for holding my son. His fingers wrapped around one of mine like it was the only thing tethering him to the world. I swore right then that nothing would ever hurt him. For 3 months, life felt perfect. Late-night feedings, diaper runs, sleepy laughter, the kind of ordinary chaos I'd once thought I'd never deserve. Neighbors came by with gifts, waving through the window. Even Karen surprisingly left a card. It read, "Congratulations. Please ensure all noise levels remain within community limits after 9 p.m. Elena rolled her eyes and laughed. I didn't. Something in me tightened every time I saw Karen's white SUV circling the block. She'd stop in front of our house, linger, then drive off. I told myself I was being paranoid, old instincts flaring from my former life. But paranoia keeps agents alive. And one evening, when I stepped out to bring in the trash bins, I found a notice taped to our front door. Violation? Unauthorized structure. Flagpole exceeds approved height. It wasn't just the notice, it was the red ink. Big, angry, permanent letters. That night, I saw her standing across the street, clipboard in hand, watching. And I swear, she smiled. That was the first time I felt it. That old twitch in my chest. The one that told me something was about to go wrong. I didn't know then that she'd take more than a flagpole from me. She'd take everything. It started small. A noise complaint here, a warning letter there. Karen's notes became part of our weekly routine, like bills or junk mail. She'd sign them in thick cursive, HOA President K. McBride. At first, I tried to reason with her. I called. I emailed. Karen, I've complied with every rule. I even cut the flagpole down 2 feet. She'd always reply with that brittle, rehearsed politeness. It's not personal, Michael. Just procedure. But it was personal, because soon it wasn't about a flagpole. She complained about our lawn, too long by half an inch. She fined us for leaving a stroller on the porch. She even cited my wife for having unapproved exterior decorations. It was a wreath. A baby blue wreath that said, "Welcome home, Noah." Elena tried to laugh it off. But behind her smile, I saw the fatigue, the anxiety that comes from being watched. I used to think surveillance was something that happened in alleys or on wiretaps. Turns out, it also happens in cul-de-sacs. 3 months after Noah was born, we hosted a small Sunday barbecue. Just 5 neighbors, nothing wild. Burgers, music low. Noah and his bouncer beside the table. Around sunset, Karen's SUV rolled up slow, headlights washing across the yard. She got out holding her phone like a badge. "You're violating community sound ordinances," she snapped. "Music above 55 decibels after 6 p.m. I muted the speaker. "It's a baby monitor app," I said. "It's measuring Noah's breathing, not the music." She stepped closer, peering into the bouncer. "That baby shouldn't be out this late." "It's unhealthy," Elena's voice trembled. "He's fine, Karen. Please. Some people shouldn't be parents if they can't follow simple rules." That was the first time I lost my temper. I stepped forward, not close enough to threaten, just close enough for her to see I wasn't afraid. "You need to leave. Now." She flinched, but there was something in her eyes. Satisfaction. Like she wanted this. She snapped a photo of me, then another of Elena holding Noah. "I'll be reporting this to the HOA board." When she left, the whole yard was silent. The neighbors looked down, muttering apologies, collecting their plates. That night, I couldn't sleep. Old instincts came back, the way your body remembers tension, the way you can sense danger before it announces itself. In the DEA, we called it the hum. That low vibration under your skin when something's wrong. And I could feel it now, humming through the walls of our house. 2 days later, I came home from a grocery run to find animal control in my driveway. 2 officers stood beside my trash cans holding a citation pad. "We received a report of animal neglect." "We don't have an animal," I said. They shrugged. "Anonymous call. Said they heard crying in the garage. I opened the door. Nothing but tools and boxes." One of them sighed. "Sorry, sir." "Happens sometimes. People weaponize calls like this. I didn't have to ask who made it." Karen stood across the street again, watering her already perfect lawn. Our eyes met. She smiled. That was when I decided to file my own report. I went to the HOA board meeting. 7 people in a beige conference room at the community center. Karen sat at the head like a judge. When I raised my complaints, she cut me off with fake civility. "Mr. Parker, we appreciate your input, but as a former law enforcement officer, surely you understand the importance of compliance." My jaw tightened. Compliance isn't the same as harassment. A man beside her, the treasurer, cleared his throat. "Let's keep this civil." Maybe there's been a misunderstanding. but Karen wasn't backing down. If residents followed the rules, there wouldn't be misunderstandings. I realized then she didn't want order. She wanted control. And she had it. The rest of the board nodded along like marionettes. I walked out before I said something I'd regret. A week later, Elena called me at work. Her voice was shaking. "Michael?" She was in the yard again. She said the baby's crying too much. She said she's keeping records. Keeping records of what? Of us. She has a notebook, Michael. I told her to lock the doors and not to engage. That night, I installed a security camera above the porch. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was protection. At 2:47 a.m., I got the first alert. Motion detected. When I checked the feed, my stomach turned. Karen, standing in our yard, taking photos of the nursery window. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I was done playing by her rules. I printed the footage, filed a formal harassment complaint with the county sheriff, and delivered a copy to the HOA board. Elena begged me to let it go. She's dangerous, Michael. People like her, they don't stop when you push back. They double down. But I'd spent my life chasing people who thought they were untouchable. I wasn't about to let a suburban dictator terrorize my family. I didn't know then how right my wife was. Karen did double down. And when she finally snapped, it wasn't over noise or flags or lawns. It was over a stroller. A stroller, and one fatal misunderstanding that wasn't a misunderstanding at all. A week after I filed the harassment report, things got quiet. Too quiet. Karen's SUV didn't cruise by. No notes on the door, no phone calls or HOA emails. Elena called it peace. I called it the calm before the storm. Because I've seen that kind of silence before, in stakeouts, in ambushes, the world goes still right before it erupts. One Friday morning, I woke early to feed Noah. He'd been fussing, little fists waving in the air, that tiny scrunch between his eyebrows that always made me laugh. Elena came out in her robe, hair messy, smiling. "Your turn, Agent Dad," I chuckled. Retired Agent Dad. Big difference. We made coffee, took turns holding him, talking about maybe taking a small trip to the coast when things settled down. That's when the doorbell rang. It was 6:15 a.m. No one visits that early unless it's bad news. I opened the door. Karen stood there, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. Her lipstick was perfect, hair sprayed stiff, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Mr. Parker, you're in violation again." I blinked. "Of what?" She pointed past me toward the porch. "That stroller." "It's obstructing the entryway," I laughed. I couldn't help it. "Karen, it's a baby stroller. We live here. It's not an obstruction. Community guidelines state..." "Karen, it's 6 a.m., I said, voice rising. "You're trespassing." She stiffened. "I'm documenting this." She raised her phone and started filming. "You're threatening me. You've been aggressive since you moved in. I'm asking you to leave." Elena appeared behind me, Noah in her arms. Karen's voice grew shriller. "You see? Even now, your wife's endangering that baby. It's cold outside." Elena's grip tightened on Noah. "Please go." "I'm reporting this to Child Services," Karen snapped. "This baby isn't safe here." Something inside me snapped too. "If you ever step on this property again, Karen, You'll what?" The pause was electric, the kind that happens right before something shatters. "You'll hurt me?" she whispered, recording every second. "I knew it. I knew you were unstable." She turned and stormed off, muttering into her phone. I shut the door. My hands were shaking. Elena looked at me like she'd just seen a ghost. "Michael, she's going to twist this." I nodded. "Let her. We've got the camera footage too. But deep down, I knew how people like Karen worked. They didn't twist stories, they rewrote them. By noon, 2 county deputies were at our door. "We received a welfare check request," one said. "Concern for the infant's safety." I laughed bitterly. Let me guess who called. They didn't answer, but I saw the glance they exchanged. They already knew. They looked around, saw the spotless living room, the neatly folded baby blankets, the security monitor showing a sleeping Noah. "You're fine," one said softly. "We get these. Happens with certain neighbors. I wanted to believe that was the end. It wasn't." That evening, after putting Noah down, I sat on the porch. The air was heavy, thick with humidity and the smell of wet grass. Then headlights flashed across the yard. Karen's SUV. It stopped halfway down the block. She didn't get out this time, just sat there, watching. I stared back, refusing to move. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, she drove off. But before she turned the corner, her brake lights flickered twice, like some kind of signal. I didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, a new HOA letter arrived. Stamped in bold red, "Final warning, enforcement action pending." Attached was a photo. Our baby stroller. From the angle of our driveway, taken last night. I called the sheriff's office again. "We'll send someone to talk to her," they said, "but unless she threatens you directly, there's not much we can do." I hung up, staring at the phone. Law, policy, procedure, words I'd spent my whole life enforcing. And now they were useless. I thought about going over there, making her understand face to face that she was crossing a line. But Elena begged me not to. "Michael, she's trying to make you the villain. Don't give her that." So I waited. I tried to ignore her. But you can't ignore someone who's already decided you're their enemy. A few days later, it happened. It was a Sunday. Quiet, overcast, drizzle tapping against the windows. Elena was rocking Noah by the fireplace. He'd just started giggling, that soft, breathy laugh babies make when they don't quite know why they're happy. I stepped outside to grab something from the car. That's when I saw Karen again, across the street, standing near our mailbox holding her phone. I walked halfway down the driveway. "Karen, leave the mailbox alone." "Just checking community property," she said. "It's my mail." Step back. "Are you threatening me again, Mr. Parker?" "Karen, I'm warning you." And then I heard it, a loud bang from the house. I turned. Elena's scream cut through the air. I ran. The world narrowed to tunnel vision. Front door, hallway, living room. Elena was on the floor, cradling Noah, blood on her hands. "Michael, she shot..." I didn't hear the rest. I knelt beside them. My boy wasn't moving, just this stillness, too still, too quiet. I pressed my fingers to his neck. Nothing. Outside, I heard the sound of a gun clattering to the pavement. Karen's voice, high-pitched, trembling. "It was an accident!" He scared me, the door. I looked through the open window. Karen stood in her yard, gun shaking in her hand, face white as bone. She'd been filming again. When the door opened suddenly, maybe Elena's silhouette startled her, she fired. But she didn't hit the door. She hit my son. The next few minutes were chaos. Sirens, neighbors screaming, someone yelling for an ambulance. I remember one paramedic pulling me away, my shirt soaked in blood. Another holding Elena as she screamed Noah's name over and over. I could still see Karen, standing in her driveway, blank, murmuring the same words on repeat. It was an accident. It was an accident. But in her eyes there wasn't horror. There was fear. Fear for herself. At the hospital, time collapsed. Doctors moving in blurs, machines wailing, then silence, the kind that feels like it erases sound itself. A doctor with kind eyes said the words I already knew were coming. "We're so sorry." I don't remember leaving the room. I just remember the smell of disinfectant and the weight of the empty blanket in my arms. Later that night, when detectives questioned me, they asked for every detail: my background, the harassment, the reports, the footage. They promised justice. But I'd worked in the system. I knew what came next. Statements, evidence, court, plea deals, technicalities. Justice didn't come easy, and it didn't come fast. 2 days later, Karen was released pending investigation. Unintentional discharge, they called it. Stand your ground laws, her lawyer argued. She said she felt threatened. She said she thought someone was breaking into her home. The local news called it a tragic misunderstanding. I called it murder. The house became a mausoleum. Noah's toys untouched, his crib still warm. Elena barely spoke. At night, I'd hear her whispering to the baby monitor like he could still hear her. I'd sit outside in the dark, watching Karen's house, the porch light still on, the wind chimes she'd always polished now clinking softly in the night air. And every time those chimes moved, I'd feel that same hum again, deep, steady, dangerous. The part of me I'd buried when I retired was clawing its way back up. Because I wasn't just a grieving father anymore. I was a federal agent who'd spent his life bringing men to justice, and now justice was being denied. That night, I opened the old locker in the garage. Inside, my badge, my weapon, and a box of files from my DEA days. I stared at them for a long time, and for the first time since Noah died, I felt something other than grief. Purpose. That's where the line between justice and revenge starts to blur. Because once you've lost everything, the rules stop mattering. And I was ready to find out which side of that line I was willing to live on. The day after we buried Noah, the sky looked exactly the same as it had when he was born. Blue, still, cruel in its indifference. The cemetery smelled of cut grass and rain. Elena stood motionless beside the tiny white coffin. Her hands hung at her sides, raw from clutching tissues until they tore. No words left, just the sound of wind brushing through the oaks. I thought I'd cried everything out. But as they lowered him, a sound escaped me I didn't recognize. Half growl, half prayer. When you hold your child's body, something primal in you dies. But something else wakes up too. The reporters came first. Then the lawyers. Then the silence. Karen went on television, trembling on camera, voice rehearsed. I thought someone was breaking in. I didn't know it was the baby's mother. It was dark. I'm so sorry for their loss. The host nodded sympathetically. Neighbors sent thoughts and prayers. And the comments rolled in, half defending her, half condemning her. I watched every second, paused on every frame. Her hands didn't shake when she spoke. Her eyes didn't water. She wasn't sorry. She was scared, scared of me. The DA called it a complex case. The evidence was inconclusive. Her lawyer argued reasonable fear. I'd heard it all before. The system that trained me now protected her. I tried to keep it together for Elena, but she was gone long before she left. She moved out 2 weeks later, saying the house suffocated her. She kissed my cheek once, whispered, "You're still looking for something you'll never find." Then she walked out, carrying only a duffel bag and Noah's blanket. At night, the house spoke, floorboards settling like sighs, the baby monitor still blinking, searching for a signal that would never come. I started keeping notes, details, timelines, witness names, old habits, a case file, my son's case file. I called the sheriff again and again, each time. "We're still reviewing ballistics, Mr. Parker. We're waiting on the prosecutor's decision. We'll be in touch." They never were. 3 weeks, then 4. Then, Karen's house lit up with Christmas decorations. A giant inflatable Santa on the lawn where she'd fired the shot. Music playing, laughter drifting through the open windows. It was like Noah had never existed. That night, I walked across the street. No badge, no warrant. Just a father. I stood in the dark beside her mailbox listening to her laughter. My hand brushed the pistol under my jacket. I could end it. One squeeze, no trial, no plea. Then I saw her through the window, Karen sitting at her kitchen table staring at a photo of her own son in uniform. A soldier, probably deployed somewhere. For a second, I saw her not as the monster, but as another parent, one who might lose a child too. And the rage cracked, just enough for guilt to crawl in. I stepped back into the shadows and left. The next morning, Detective Reeves called. "Parker, we're filing charges." My chest tightened. What kind? Negligent homicide. Not murder. But it's something I hung up without replying. Something. Not enough. The trial felt like slow torture. The courtroom smelled of disinfectant and coffee. Karen sat at the defense table, pearls around her neck, eyes red at the corners but dry. Her lawyer painted her as a victim of fear. A lone woman, terrorized by a hostile neighbor. They played her phone footage, me telling her to leave, my voice hard, my stance rigid. They froze the frame where I stepped toward her. The jury saw a former federal agent armed with anger. They didn't see a father begging for peace. When the verdict came, it was like déjà vu. Guilty of involuntary manslaughter, sentence 18 months suspended. A suspended sentence. No prison. She walked out of the same door we entered. I remember the reporters shoving microphones in my face. "Mr. Parker, do you feel justice was served?" I didn't answer, because justice isn't a sentence. It's a child who never grows up. That night, I drove to the lake, the one the HOA always bragged about in their brochures, reflecting the serenity of community life. I parked, stepped out, and stared at the black water. I thought about ending it, about slipping under and finally being where my son was. Then I felt something, a tiny weight in my pocket, Noah's pacifier. I'd kept it without realizing. I sat there till dawn, holding it, whispering apologies to a child who'd never hear them. When the sun rose, I made a decision. Not the kind I used to make with a gun or a badge. Something quieter. I called the local paper. I gave them everything. Emails, footage, reports. I told them how an HOA president turned to fear into violence and walked free. The story went viral within a week. Neighbors started protesting. The HOA board resigned. Karen's house went dark. But none of it brought Noah back. One night, months later, I found a letter taped to my door. "You won. I lost everything. I hope you're happy." No signature, but I knew the handwriting. I burned it in the sink, watched the ink curl into ash. Then, for the first time, I slept through the night. When I woke, something had shifted. The rage had dulled, leaving behind something heavy but clean. Grief doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. And in that new shape, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. Not revenge, not closure, but the need to make sure no one else lived this story again. The story spread faster than I ever imagined. Within days, every headline carried some version of the same phrase. HOA president shoots neighbor's infant. Claims self-defense. For weeks, my phone never stopped ringing. Journalists, lawyers, advocacy groups. Some wanted my grief on camera. Others wanted my anger. I gave them neither. I gave them facts. I sent the footage of her trespassing, the harassment complaints, the ignored reports. I spoke about how systems meant to protect us look the other way when the aggressor wears pearls instead of gang colors. And people listened. At first, The community divided like glass under pressure. Half wanted to forget, to protect the neighborhood's image. The other half began leaving flowers on our porch. One morning, I found a folded note among them. We should have stopped her sooner. I'm sorry, no name. Just handwriting I didn't recognize. That's when I realized it wasn't just our family she'd broken. It was everyone's illusion of safety. The county finally moved to dissolve the HOA board. The bylaws that gave them near absolute authority were rewritten in public hearings packed with angry residents. People spoke of power abused in the name of order. An old veteran shouted, "You can't legislate decency, but you sure can take away the tools people use to pretend they have it." When he finished, the whole room clapped. I sat in the back, silent, because all I could see was Noah's empty stroller in my mind. Then came the civil trial. Different courtroom. Same smell of paper and fear. This time, I wasn't a witness. I was the plaintiff. My lawyer asked if I wanted to sue for damages. I said, I don't want her money. I want accountability. So we aimed higher. We went after the HOA's insurance, the negligent enforcement of their own policies, the failure to remove a president after repeated complaints. The defense tried to paint me as unstable again. They played the same clips, but this time, we played ours. The midnight footage of her photographing our nursery window, the deputy reports, the recorded threats. By the end, the jury didn't look at me with suspicion anymore. They looked at her. Verdict: liable. Restitution awarded to the family of Noah Parker. It wasn't justice, but it was a record. Something history couldn't erase. After the verdict, I walked out into the courthouse parking lot. It was raining, steady, soft. The kind of rain that smells like forgiveness if you let it. A young reporter jogged up with a mic. "Mr. Parker, what do you hope people take from this?" I thought for a long time before answering. That fear doesn't give you permission to destroy someone's life. And that silence makes you complicit. He nodded. And for once, no follow-up question came. Months passed. Elena came back for a day in May, the anniversary of Noah's birth. We met at the lake, the same one where I almost ended things. She laid a single white flower on the water. "Do you ever stop hearing it?" she asked. "What?" "The sound." I knew what she meant, the gunshot that never really stops echoing. "No," I said, "but it gets quieter." We didn't reconcile. We didn't need to. We'd both learned that grief doesn't always heal together. Sometimes it survives separately, respectfully. Before she left, she hugged me and whispered, "Keep doing what you're doing. Make it mean something." So I did. I started speaking at community forums, law enforcement conferences, even HOA conventions. I told them what happens when bureaucracy replaces humanity. Every time I stood behind a microphone, my palms shook, not from nerves, but from memory. I'd look out at those faces and think, any one of you could be a Karen, or a Michael, or a Noah. And sometimes that realization made people cry. Other times, it made them angry. Either reaction was fine. It meant they were listening. A nonprofit reached out, Families for Accountability. They asked if I'd help write a proposal for Noah's Law, legislation limiting HOA authority to enter private property without cause and requiring psychological screening for leadership roles involving enforcement power. It started as a petition, then a bill draft, then a vote. 1 year later, it passed in our state Senate by 3 votes. When the news broke, I went back to the lake again, sat on the same bench, same spot. The water looked different this time, alive, moving, catching sunlight. I closed my eyes and whispered, "We did it, kiddo." And for a split second, the wind moved across the surface like a tiny hand brushing back a ripple. Life didn't return to normal. It never does after something like that. But it found rhythm again. I fixed the fence, mowed the lawn, took long walks at dusk. The neighbors who once avoided eye contact now waved, cautiously at first, then warmly. Every Christmas, someone leaves a blue ornament on our porch, the same color as the wreath that once caused all the trouble. They never sign their names. I keep every one. It's been 3 years since the shot that ended my son's life and changed mine. The neighborhood has aged with it. Grass a little higher, mailboxes repainted, faces turned older by what we all saw. They rebuilt the HOA under a new name. Different people, new rules, same street. But when I walk those sidewalks now, people nod instead of pretending not to see me. That small acknowledgement feels like progress. Karen moved away after her probation ended. No forwarding address, no word. Sometimes I still catch myself glancing at her old house, half expecting to see that white SUV. But it's gone, and the quiet that follows doesn't hurt anymore. I teach a class now at the community college, Conflict and Consequence. It's about the psychology of escalation, how fear mutates into control, how rules become weapons when empathy disappears. The students are young, idealistic. They think justice is simple math. I tell them justice is a language, one most of us learn too late. On the first day, I always start with the same story. Not about the shooting, not directly. I tell them about the moment I realized a clipboard could be more dangerous than a gun. When people believe they're the only ones following the rules, I say, that's when they start thinking everyone else deserves punishment. Some of them take notes, some just stare. At home, the nursery is a study now. The crib's gone, but I left one wall untouched, the pale blue paint Elena picked, the faint outline of clouds we stenciled together. A photo of Noah sits on the desk. He's smiling, or maybe it's just the hint of a smile, the kind that babies make when they're drifting between dreams. Every morning, I say his name out loud, not like a prayer, more like a roll call, making sure he's still part of my day. Because forgetting would be worse than hurting. Sometimes people ask if I've forgiven Karen. I always tell them the truth. Number. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give the person who hurt you. It's a muscle you build so they can't break you again, and I'm still training mine, but I have stopped hating her. Hate was a fire that kept me warm when everything else went cold. Now, I keep a different fire. One that lights the way for others lost in their own darkness. Last spring, a woman approached me after a talk in another town. She said, "My HOA fined me for flying a memorial flag for my husband. I thought I was crazy to fight back. Your story helped me." She hugged me before I could answer. And in that moment, I understood something. Noah's life wasn't measured by the days he had. It was measured by the lives he continues to touch. That realization didn't erase the pain, but it gave it direction. Grief without direction becomes a weapon. With direction, it becomes purpose. There's a park near the courthouse now, a small one, built with settlement funds. A plaque by the gate reads, "Noah's Garden, for every child who deserves to grow up without fear." On weekends, families bring their kids there. The laughter carries across the grass like the sound I used to hear through our walls at night. Soft, pure, endless. Sometimes I sit on the bench beneath the oak and just listen. The wind chimes they hung nearby are the same kind Karen once had. Funny thing, I don't hate their sound anymore. They remind me that even noise can become music if you let it. Elena visits once a year. We don't talk about the past much. We talk about the future, hers, mine, the one that belongs to a boy who never got to have one. Before she leaves, she always touches the plaque and says, "He changed more than we ever could have." She's right. Last week I received a letter postmarked from another state. No name, just handwriting I recognized instantly. Sharp, deliberate. Inside, a single line. I'm sorry. I see him in my dreams, too. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Some apologies are meant to stay suspended in the air, not accepted, not rejected, just finally spoken. I folded the note, placed it in Noah's file, and closed the drawer. That night, I walked down to the lake one last time. The air smelled like pine and distant rain. Moonlight scattered across the water like shattered glass finding its way back together. I thought about all the lives I'd lived. Agent, husband, father, widower, witness, teacher, each one built on the ashes of the last. I whispered, I kept my promise, kiddo. Nothing hurt you again, and because of you, fewer will hurt at all. For a second, the wind lifted, soft, warm, almost playful. A ripple crossed the lake, gentle as a heartbeat. I took that as his answer. As I turned to go, the horizon lightened, not just dawn, but something deeper, like the world exhaling after holding its breath too long. And for the first time since that day, I smiled. Not because the pain was gone, but because it finally had somewhere to go. Justice didn't bring my son back. But it taught me this. When fear takes a life, the only real answer is to build something that gives life back. Comment below what justice means to you.